Hey everyone, Pastor Aaron here again with the Daily Lectionary. We continue our journey in the book of Exodus, and today we encounter perhaps the most troubling narrative inside the Torah, the killing of the firstborn. Now, in previous videos, we discussed how the God of the Hebrews, identified as I Am, is locked in a battle with Pharaoh. And Pharaoh, who represents the god Ra. And so we have a battle here between two deities. And so when we read the book of Exodus, we should really understand this mythopoetic language as attempting to explain the power of deities and the way that deities respond to human beings. And we learn in Exodus 3 that the God of the Hebrews, I Am, is moved by compassion for the people who are enslaved. Moved by compassion, identifies with that situation of being oppressed and promises to act, and in so doing raises up Moses and his brother Aaron. Pharaoh, on the other hand, responds in trying to keep his power and his stranglehold on anyone who is enslaved by him. Because in the ancient world, the theology would have held, well, the Hebrews are enslaved because their deity is weaker than the deity of the people who are enslaving them. So again, when we read Exodus, we should remember that this mythopoetic language, this story is really about the nature of deities and the nature of community. So we've gone through all of the different plagues, and we've learned that Pharaoh hardens his own heart, but then God certainly helps at various times. And we've got a video about that right here. God's hardened Pharaoh's heart, perhaps, but Pharaoh acts with his own free will and goes in the direction that he's going to go. So it gets to the point where I Am says, I am going to slaughter all the firstborn of those who are in dwellings that don't have blood of a sacrificed lamb on the lintels or on the doorposts. And if you want to know more about that, you can go to A Place of Grace events and look at our Bible study last week, and there are notes there. So we have this situation where God is going to come like an angel of death and pass over those dwellings that are marked correctly. In today's passage, that's happened. At midnight, the Lord killed all the firstborn sons in Egypt, from the king's son, who was heir to the throne, to the son of the prisoner in the dungeon. All the firstborn of the animals were also killed. So what we learn here is that I Am is egalitarian, even in terms of leading people to death. We also see that Pharaoh was powerless, that Ra is powerless to stop this. Pharaoh's own son is killed. That night, the king, his officials, and all the other Egyptians were awakened. There was a loud crying throughout Egypt, because there was not one home in which there was not a dead son. That same night, the king sent for Moses and Aaron and said, "Get out, you and your Israelites. Leave my country. Go and worship your Lord as you ask. Take your sheep, goat, cattle, and leave. Also pray for a blessing on me." Also pray for a blessing on me. There's a lot more in the passage, but I just want to focus on these details. This is a heartbreaking scenario. And we could definitely look at I Am and question, why are you doing this? And do we really want to follow a God who does this? But I think we also have to look at Pharaoh and say, why did you allow this to happen? You were so committed to keeping people enslaved, to preventing them. Remember, the original request was just for a 3-day weekend, like we just had, right? To worship God. And Pharaoh said no. And then he made it more difficult for the people who were already working by taking away the straw. So they had to gather their own straw to make bricks. Now, this doesn't get I Am off the hook, right? But I think one of the things that this story is looking at is What moves a deity? And what moves a deity to anoint people, and how do they respond to what the deity has done? And so with Moses and Aaron, I am is moved by compassion. Moses has a stutter, and so he brings Aaron in, and later Miriam, their sister. And they're moved to act on behalf of a people, right? On behalf of a community. So this is a community action here. Pharaoh seems to be acting only for his own power and for his own glory, because it's not just his son that is killed, but it's the sons of everyone else in Egypt. Now, I still wrestle with a God who will do this. And here I will say, I don't know that I take the story literally. I take it seriously, but I don't take it literally. And that's because I think what we have here are examinations of the options that people have for deities, and even Pharaoh, when he sees that Ra, this god of the sun, a god of war, a god of power, has been powerless to protect the firstborn in Egypt, even Pharaoh says, yeah, that I am, could you pray for a blessing upon me, please? Now there's much more that happens, and we will pick up the story tomorrow as we continue our journey in Exodus. But let us think about the language we use when we talk about God. And if you disagree with my interpretation of this, please mention it in the comments. There are so many different ways that we can look at this, but I think it's an important story for us to encounter because it's uncomfortable. We can't just take what we like from Scripture. We have to take the whole story and be critical, but also, as the Methodists teach us, to use our experience and our reason and our tradition along with Scripture to inform our theology and who we are. All right, friends, be well, do good works, and love one another. I'll try to do the same.